I was a little bush baby. I grew up here in the Sunshine Coast, landlocked, and I didn't actually start sailing until I was in my early 20s. So I did the normal thing when you finish high school. I went and studied university, and it wasn't until one of my summer holidays at university that I thought, I've got a 3-month break here, might as well go somewhere really, really nice and tropical and go on a holiday. So I thought I'd head up to the Whitsunday Islands. And I went up there and I thought, I'll just try this whole yachting thing. See if I can get a job as a hostie on one of those sailboats up there. And so I applied for one company and I got a job the next day. So I started in the Whitsundays. My sailing career started as a hostess on an 80-foot maxi racing yacht, cooking for 34 passengers who do tours around the Whitsunday Islands. Not your traditional introduction into sailing. But I fell in love with sailing. I fell in love with the fact that every day is a challenge. Every day there's something new to learn out there from the wind or from the boat or from the engineering side of things. There's always something to test you. For me, I was very, very lucky to have a very patient skipper and an extremely patient deckhand who would let me follow them around and ask a million questions as I kept trying to fuel my brain and kept trying to learn all that I could about sailing. So it wasn't too long after I was a hostie that I got promoted up to deckhand. So I started, managing the ropes and managing the boat. So that was fantastic. And I spent about a year with the company, and after that I thought probably time I went back and finished this university degree I'd started. So I finished university, and the very week I finished university, I had a phone call from a friend of mine, and she's like, Lisa, you think you can get here in a week? We're in Samoa, we need to sail this boat to Hawaii. So her and her father and 2 other friends of hers were sailing this 40-foot sloop from Samoa to Hawaii. One of those friends of hers had to leave in a hurry, family emergency, and so she's like, do you think you can come and fill this place and come and sail to Hawaii with us? Of course I said yes, because who's going to say no to a chance like that? And so I packed up my life, I went and applied for a passport, and then I went and flew to Samoa and joined this boat. Now for me, this trip was a huge life-changing event. I didn't know it at the time, but it really set me on the path of becoming a sailor and setting my career path as becoming a sailor. So throughout this journey, has anybody here actually sailed across an ocean? Not seen land? Sailed outside of land? Yeah? It's a really incredible experience. You sail outside of land, and you might be at sea for 30 days. It's just you and the guys on board. And you've got the whales, you've got the stars, you've got the dolphins, the albatross, whatever's around, and that's your entertainment. There's no TV, there's no mobile phone, there's no internet. You're in nature, you're in this raw environment, and it's magical out there, it's beautiful. And I fell more and more in love with sailing the further I sailed away from land. So off we went. We spent 3 months at sea. My poor mum didn't hear from me for 3 months, and she was rather worried by the time we arrived in Hawaii. She got over that. I arrived in Hawaii and I thought, I'll keep this sailing thing. I'll see if I can make it a career. So I got a job as a deckhand on a 45-foot catamaran in Hawaii. We're doing day trips from Maui Island to Lanai Island and back. I mean, what a life. Just sailed across an ocean. I'm now working on a yacht in Hawaii. I mean, that was fantastic. I couldn't have asked for anything better. Eventually, though, I had to return to Australia. So when I got back to Australia, I thought, I'll just get the first job I can get. I've got no money saved, so I need to pay rent. I need to be able to rent a house, so I'll get the first job I can get. For me, that was selling costume jewelry in the mall. I had one of those booths outdoor in the hallways. It was 4x6 booth, selling $5 items of costume jewelry for 20 bucks an hour. Now, I just sailed across an ocean, and I'd just been working on a yacht in Hawaii, and all of a sudden I'm there selling costume jewelry in the mall under fluorescent lights all day. It was a little bit of a downgrade for me, unfortunately. But you do what you got to do. And while I was there, I thought, I'll start looking for the next opportunity. I didn't know what that opportunity was going to be though, but I knew I wanted to keep with this theme of sailing. My mum's partner at the time was a sailor, and so he started lending me all these books on solo sailings. Jesse Martin, Kay Cotty, Robert Knox-Johnson, Peter Gross, all these incredible world-renowned sailors. And I started reading their stories. And I started reading how they came from being a regular person to sailing around the world and the reasons why. And I started getting this romantic idea that sounds pretty good to me, sailing solo around the world. That sounds like a pretty epic challenge. maybe I'll try and strive for that one day. So I started thinking more and more along the lines of I'd really like to do something solo myself one day. At this stage though, I only had a deckhand level of experience. I'm not a pro. I could put the sails up when the skipper told me to. I could tack, I could jibe the boat, that was about it. I certainly couldn't navigate it safely across an ocean, and I certainly couldn't navigate solo around the world. So I needed more experience. If I was going to make this dream that was blooming a reality, I needed to gain more experience. So in one of those books there was this story mentioned, Clipper Round the World Yacht Race, founded by Sir Robert Knox Johnson, who's the first man to sail around the world non-stop, solo and unassisted. And he thought he'd really want the general public to have an opportunity to circumnavigate as well, to have an idea of what this experience was. So he founded the Clipper Race. Basically, you sign up, you pay a berth fee, you get allocated one of 10 identical yachts, and you race each other around the world. So it's a match fleet, so it's down to how much work you put in as to how good you go in the race. This sounds perfect. You don't have to have any sailing experience. 40% of the people who take part have never sailed before they sign up and race a yacht around the world. To me, as this deckhand level of experience with this gene of solo sailing, sounded perfect, sounded ideal. So I thought, I'll look into this Clipper race thing, they give you some training, I think I'm going to try for this. Found out the price tag to go and sail solo or sail crude around the world, £40,000. Now, I'm working in my 4x6 cubicle, earning $20 an hour, $80,000, which is what it was at the time, was a huge amount of money. And I never had that sort of money in my life. I mean, how was I, this sales assistant, going to raise $80,000 so I could go and sail around the world? I didn't know how I was going to do it. I'd never done anything like this before. And, but I had the idea that I wanted to do it, and that was enough. So thinking about it, same time, still hasn't signed my contract yet, I was still not quite there. Same time Jessica Watson finished her solo circumnavigation. Now she was the youngest person to circumnavigate the world solo, and she was 16 at the time that she finished. 16. And I figured, hey, if a 16-year-old could sail around the world solo, surely I could raise the money to do it with crew. Yeah? That's my mentality at the time. So I was almost there, but I wasn't quite sold. Did another day at my boring office job, selling my costume jewelry, and came home and flicked the telly on, my little time waster. And this TV ad came up, and I couldn't even tell you what the TV ad was advertising. But the punchline of the ad was, just do, because the world has changed by doers. And that really resonated with me. I was like, that's so true. I just have to commit, I just have to make it happen. Otherwise I never will. So I signed my contract with Clipper that night. Now these contracts are an all or nothing contract. You sign up, you raise the money to race around the world. You sign up, you don't raise the money, you don't race around the world, but you still owe the money. So there's a huge financial commitment. But I signed up, signed the contract, locked myself in. I had 12 months to raise $80,000 before I went to circumnavigate it. I didn't know the first thing about this, so I went to the local library and rented a book on sports marketing and sponsorship. And I started reading about how to write a proposal and trying to do my research, good old Google out there. So I started looking into Google and trying to find other people's proposals to get some ideas of how to approach companies and what to write. I sent out thousands of proposals, thousands upon thousands of proposals, all personalised, all direct to specific companies, all addressed to the right person. My mailbox would fill up with thousands and thousands of rejection letters. All very lovely and polite. Oh, we wish you all the best, but unfortunately we can't help you right now. But still a rejection letter none the same. So 6 months into my 12 months I had to raise this money, and I was getting nowhere. I was spending every waking minute working on this when I wasn't actually at work. But it wasn't working for me. It wasn't gonna happen. So I thought, I need to start thinking outside the box. I need to start thinking of a different way to raise this money. I thought, has anyone seen a bookathon, a readathon at school? When I was in high school and primary school, we had this thing called a readathon. Basically, you had, say, a month period, and people would sponsor you per book you read in that 1 month period. And you might get your mum and dad to sponsor you $5 a book or whatever it was. You read 10 books in a month, you'd raise $50 or $100, depending on whatever your sponsorship was. So I had this idea of taking that strategy, that idea, into riding, and I'd do something called a ride-a-thon. And I'd cycle my bike for a day, all day, without getting off it, and I'd see how far I could get, and people could sponsor me per kilometre that I cycled. That was my idea. I was telling my flatmates about it, and one of them said to me, "That sounds like a really great idea, but if you're going to ride, say, 100k in one day, why not do it for 10 days and ride 1,000? I was like, oh, yeah, that's a really good idea. So Ride Through Pause was born. I ended up cycling solo from Sydney to the Sunshine Coast, unaided, carrying everything on the back of the bike. My days during this ride would be, I'd get up, I'd cycle 100 kilometres, I'd get to the next town that I was due to stop in that night, I'd update my video diaries, I'd update my blog, give the media a call and say, hey, I'm in town, can I do a radio interview, can I get the local paper, whatever it was. And then I'd go to the local bar and I'd start selling raffle tickets at the pub. I had a diamond ring to raffle, was sponsored to me. So I started raffling, selling these raffle tickets. And I'd walk around all night, till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever it took. And then I'd get a couple hours sleep, get up the next day, ride another 100k. Now, that alone is a really big challenge. But my very last training ride, before I left Sydney, I'd flown down with my bike. But when I reassembled my bike after boxing it up, I didn't set the seat height correctly. So my last 100k training ride, before I went and cycled all the way to the Sunshine Coast, I had actually strained both my knees. So I had these swollen, strained, extremely painful knees, and I had to ride 1,300 kilometres on them. Codeine became my best friend, and it was a great testament to my determination to succeed with this, and my focus and my ability to achieve against pain and against these downer moments. And I was successful. I rode all the way to the Sunshine Coast. So to me, if I could do that with injured knees, then I could sail around the world. I had what it took to sail around the world. So by this stage, I'm 12 months into my 12 months of time that I had to raise money. I'm almost there, 2 weeks until I had to fly to the UK and start my training program. At the end of that 2 weeks, I would have a 4-month block of intensive training in the UK. Now, you do a 4-week compulsory set, and then you can opt to do a Yachtmaster Fast Track. And I opted to do the Yachtmaster Fast Track. Obviously, I was there to do as much experience as possible. So I had 2 weeks. By this stage, I'd raised $40,000. I was halfway there, but it wasn't going to get me to the start line. I was only halfway there. And in 2 weeks, I was flying to the UK, and I was going to be at sea for 4 months. And then I was going to go and race around the world. I had no idea where I could raise the rest of this money from. I really didn't know if it was possible. And I didn't think it was possible. So I gave my mum a call and broke down in tears saying, I just don't know how I can pull this off. It's never going to happen. I'm only halfway there. I should just quit now. Went through all those things. My mum, being an extremely practical woman, said, you pay for the training, at least go for the training, because you're trying to become a better sailor. You'll come back a better sailor by doing that training. And I was like, actually, that's fair enough. So 2 weeks later, I jumped on a flight, I flew to the UK. Now, I'm in the UK. I started my Clipper training, and I'm 3 weeks into my Yachtmaster Fast Track program, and I've just finished my first week of Clipper Level 1 training. Now, at the end of that week, with complete strangers, week at sea together, I had one guy come up to me and say, look, I really want to see you succeed with this. I want to see you get to the start line. Here's £7,000. Just like that. His own personal money. A few minutes later, I had another guy come up to me and say, look, I can't give you the money, I don't have enough, but if I can lend you £5,000, do you think that'll help you get to the start line? And so he lent me £5,000. And all of a sudden, this other $40,000 I had to raise seemed a whole lot more achievable. And so I started working really hard for it again. And I was trying all these other options, but I wasn't getting any further. So in the end, I gave my dear old dad a call. And I said, look, Dad, I'm really sorry to have to do this. It's a last resort option. but do you think you can lend me some money? Do you think there's any possibility we could refinance against the family home? And with just a little bit of prodding from Mum, he eventually agreed to refinance against the family home. So we ended up loaning me $30,000, which is a huge amount of money. But he wasn't going to make it easy. He left me $2,000 to raise, and I had 2 weeks until the race started. So $2,000, 2 weeks left, I'm this close, I'm almost gonna pull it off, and I didn't know where I was gonna raise another $2,000 from. Obviously I'd rung every person I know and begged and borrowed and done whatever I could to get there. And I thought I'd just try one last thing. I'll go to the media, see if we can run an article in the local paper and see if, we can say she's almost there, she's this close, but if anyone out there can help her get across the finish line so that she can start. So we did that. We sent an article out to the media, and Sunshine Coast Daily posted it online, and bizarrely enough, an American citizen who was working in China, who once holidayed on the Sunshine Coast, still reads the Sunshine Coast Daily, read that article, and that night he put $2,000 into my account. Now he had no idea how much money I actually needed. We didn't put a monetary amount in that article, but $2,000 was what he thought he should give me. So all of a sudden, my world changed. From the struggle to get there to, oh my God, I'm about to sail around the world. So here's our route. So we left from the UK and England, we went down to Rio, and then we went across to South Africa, Cape Town. We're out to Geraldton in Western Australia, around the bottom of Tasmania to New Zealand, Taronga, and then up to the Gold Coast, Singapore, China, across the North Pacific to California, through the Panama Canal to New York. Then we went from New York to Nova Scotia, Derry, Londonderry, Dan Helder, and then back to the UK. So it was an epic 12 months. It's 40,000 nautical miles. It took us 10 days short of a year. And it was one hell of an adventure and worth every penny and every stress trying to get that money together. Now what I've got for you next is a very short clip. This is me trying to compress 12 months of ocean racing into 30 seconds.
And we're just cruising along beautifully. Just got a nice monsoonal rainstorm coming through.
Weather out there. The maximum seas we got in the Southern Ocean were 90-foot waves, 10-metre high waves. And when the maximum winds we encountered were 80-knot winds, 160-kilometre-hour winds. That's enough to rip the roof of your house. Pretty impressive. It was one awesome adventure. First time I ever saw snow falling was in the Southern Ocean. How cold it gets down there. And I can tell you all sorts of stories. You saw the helicopter there with the guy hanging down. We're off the Taiwanese coast, and it's the continental shelf there, so it's very short, steep waves, about 4-metre high waves. And we were just sailing along. I was driving. I hope he doesn't hold it against me. And the skipper called a last-minute sail change 5 minutes before we meant to go off watch. We were changing from our storm staysail up to our staysail, storm jib to staysail. And so a couple of guys went forward and started hanging on the new sail. There were only 2 guys left up there. The job was done. They're just putting some sail ties around the sail to secure it to the deck. And I was driving, we went over this extra steep wave, we plunged down the other side. And I shouted wave because, fairly average day at sea for us is to get washed down the deck. And you clipped on the whole time and you rely on those clips to stop you from getting washed overboard. And I shouted wave, this guy got washed down the deck and I just heard him howling. And to me, I thought that he was just fed up because we'd been on deck since 4 AM, it's freezing cold, and he was exhausted and shouldn't have been getting that wet, shouldn't have had to get thrown down on the side of a boat again 5 minutes before going off watch. However, he was screaming because he'd just broken his leg. So we ended up snapping his femur into 2. And what had happened was he was standing there just tying the finishing touches off on that sail, just about to walk back. And as the boat went through that wave, his foot got jammed under that sail. He was secured to the deck. And the rest of his body went wrapping around the inner forestay. A piece of the rigging snapped his leg twice. So all of a sudden we're in the middle of the Taiwanese waters, and we've got to do an air-to-sea rescue. So we tried to do a helicopter rescue. But remember, we've got 4-metre waves. The boat's pitching and rolling, and the only communication, the only people that spoke English were the Taiwanese hospital. They had an interpreter. So we had to talk to the hospital. They would have to radio the helicopter, translate everything, go back to the hospital, and then back to us to actually communicate everything. Now, I don't think these helicopter pilots had ever actually rescued someone off a moving yacht because they didn't know anything about rigging. They were this close to flying into our rigging. And so we're all there waving, we're trying to flag them down so that they could actually see that there were structural parts of the boat there that their propeller blades were about to hit. And the whole time the boat's just rocking and pitching, and we've got this guy with a broken leg on the deck that we're trying to get off into this helicopter. In the end, they just left us. And we were like, what the hell? They've just gone. We've got this guy that needs to get medical attention straight away, and the helicopter's just flowing off. And we didn't know what to think of it. And about half an hour later, we finally get a call from the hospital. And they're like, yeah, it's too risky. They've gone back, you have to come here. So all of a sudden, we went from first place and had to turn all the way around, head all the way back to Taiwan, 70 nautical miles. The poor guy with the broken leg was on deck for another 6 hours, and do a boat-to-boat transfer just outside of Taiwan. By the time we rejoined the race, we were in last position. We managed to overtake all the boats in 2 more nights on the way to China, and finish in 3rd place in the end. So it was pretty impressive for us. It's not the greatest moment of the trip though. The greatest moment for me was in the Southern Ocean. It stands out above all the others. It's 48 degrees south, freezing conditions. This is where the snowstorm was seen. Bitterly cold. The average waves down there are sort of 30, 40 foot waves, 50 knots of winds, a fairly average day at sea. And I thought, yeah, it was an average conditions. We'd been knocked down a few times, had a few broaches, nothing too dramatic for the Southern Ocean. We're fairly used to it by that stage. It's 2 o'clock in the morning, and my skipper wakes me up and says, look, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to go up on deck. You're going to have to go up the rig. Someone's left the halyard or something's broken up there and I had to go up and fix it. Now I was the mast monkey, I was the rigger on board, so I'd climb up the mast in any and all conditions and repair whatever needed repairing up there. So he's woken me up, pitch black night, freezing conditions, 50 knots of wind, 30 foot waves, and I got to climb the mast. So because the winds are so high, you can't actually hear the people from the deck, and they can't hear you when you're at the top of the mast. So you can't communicate to tell them to stop grinding you up, or to lower you, or any of those things. Because it's pitch black night, they can't read my hand signals. So we set up a little hands-free setup with a VHF radio. And so I started climbing the mast with this hands-free setup. I get about 50 foot in the air, just above the second spreader. And the skipper shouts out, hold on! And I didn't know what was going to happen. I thought we were going to broach or something really bad was going to happen. So I gripped the mast for my dear life. What actually happened was the whole boat was picked up by this wave, thrown down the face of it, and we surfed away at 27 knots. And I was 50 foot in the air at the time. Pitch black night. And it was one of the most incredible experiences because when the boat's surfing, and this is a 38-ton boat, this isn't a light little craft. When the boat's surfing down these waves, it stabilizes and it planes right on the surface and the whole thing vibrates and it makes this humming sound and it's like a little happy little pig in mud or something. It's just loving it. And so you're surfing down this wave, I'm halfway up the mast just holding on, and as soon as we started surfing everything stabilized, so I let go and I just hung there and enjoyed it. And I could see the bow wave coming up either side and I just loved it. I enjoyed the moment. It's an incredible experience. So for me, that's my greatest moment of circumnavigating the world. It's that one couple of seconds in time. So now I've circumnavigated, been at sea for 10 days short of a year, right back to the UK after sailing 40,000 nautical miles around the world. I've had one life-changing event after another, and I've decided that sailing is for me. Sailing is my dream. And this idea of going solo around the world was still there. Every time I was sailing a crew, I would look at every scenario we encountered and think, how would I handle this on my own? How would I cope with that scenario or that situation on my own? Excuse me, scratching my throat. So we arrived back in the UK, but of course I had no money. So I was broke still. That was the story of my life. And I was stranded because I didn't have enough money for my flight home. How was I going to get home from the UK? None of my family had any money. They'd given it all to me already. So stranded in England, and so I started volunteering for Alex Thompson Racing. And anybody seen the Hugo Boss boat with the mast walk or the kill walk? That boat. I started working for them, or volunteering for them. And then a couple of days after volunteering, they gave me a call and said, look, we've got this corporate hospitality boat. It's in Vietnam. Would you be interested in going there? We need a crew member. So of course I said yes. And so I had this amazing opportunity. They flew me to Vietnam. I joined this Mocha Open 60 racing yacht, where we sailed from Vietnam to Singapore. Then we did a month of corporate work in Singapore. And then we sailed to Malaysia, Langkawi. And then funnily enough, when my contract finished, they asked me, where would you like us to fly you to? They flew me back home to Australia. So that was a great way to get home. A little roundabout trip, but I got home to Australia. So now I've circumnavigated. I've done this amazing adventure on this Mocha Open 60. And I get back to Australia. It's 2 weeks till Christmas. So it's also 2 weeks till the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. Now, I didn't have a chance at the crew allocation times to actually start signing up or try and get on a boat. So I didn't think I'd really have any chance of doing the Sydney to Hobart that year. However, I thought I'll just try one more thing. I'll just see. You never know. So I put a press release out, posted it up on my Facebook page, and a guy who started following my journeys from the Clipper race saw that, offered me a position on his boat. So now I'm starting the Sydney to Hobart yacht race. So we headed off to Hobart. Unfortunately, a quarter of the way across the Bass Strait, we encountered steering difficulties. We ended up turning around and heading into Eden. So I'm yet to see Hobart, but maybe this year. So by now, I've circumnavigated, done the Mocha Open 60, I've done a Sydney to Hobart, or started one at least, and I was looking for the next big thing. While I was doing this searching, I thought I'd just get my qualifications together. So I did some studying and I got my Master 5, which was your Australian captain's license, skipper's ticket. Then I got my marine engineering ticket, my MED3. And I went back to the Whitsundays and started driving the very boat I learnt to sail on. I became a skipper of a 68-foot ex-American Cup racing yacht, the Whitsundays, taking people around 2-night, 3-day tours around the island. So for me, that was a really good tick. Personal achievement, come back as captain. So while I was in the Whitsundays, I was still looking for this next adventure. I came up with this, the RTL Solo Tasman Challenge. Now this race runs once every 4 years. It's solo from New Plymouth in New Zealand, and you race to Mooloolaba on the Sunshine Coast, my home port. I thought, what better way to start solo sailing than to race home into my own port with my own family on the docks. So I signed up. I was the only female to sign up, and I was the only person without a boat. Not to let that stop me. I thought, what, 12 months? Surely I can find a boat where I can figure something out here. So I started another sponsorship campaign. Working full-time away at sea was rather difficult to try and balance things. After a few months into the race, I managed to get a deal with this boat owner. He's got this 50-foot yacht. He said, no worries, you can charter my boat for this race. Set up a single-handed ocean sailing. So I thought, perfect, I've got the boat, I've got to get the rest of the funds together and away we go. Unfortunately, just a couple of months before the race, a month and a half before the race started, he gives me a call and says, I'm really sorry, I've had someone put an offer in on the boat, I'm going to have to sell it. So there he goes, you're not going to be able to charter the boat. So a month and a half, and I'm about to go and race. It's the first solo race, first solo sailing trip, and I'm now boatless. So again, I went to the media, put a press release out. It went up online, it went up through My Sailing, Sail News, all those online sailing forums. And this guy, Roger McMillan, emailed me. Now, I'd written a blog for My Sailing throughout the race. Roger McMillan's the editor of My Sailing, so he knew who I was. I didn't know who he was at the time. So he emails me and says, look, I've got a boat, it's been sitting on a mooring in Gosford for 6 months or more. Probably needs a bit of work, but it's yours if you want to take it. Of course I said yes. It's the first boat thrown at me that I could get. It was a Vanderstat 37 aluminium sloop boat. So this is the boat here. So I flew down to Gosford and started refitting the boat. I had a week and a half to get it working, Cat 1 safety registered. I spent about 3 days just trying to get the toilet working, so there's quite a bit of work to be done. But after a week and a half, I was running out of time. I just had to go, otherwise I wasn't going to get to New Zealand in time. So I left. I hadn't yet put the sails up, and I hadn't yet sailed solo. But I thought, first test of sailing solo, short jaunt all the way to New Zealand. So for my qualifying passage, I left Australia, sailed single-handed to New Zealand. On the way there, a pretty uneventful trip until about 40 miles off the coast. Had this nasty low pressure system sit right on top of me. And what happens there is there's the continental shelf, so all the ocean swell hits this shallow water and stands right up, and you get monster waves. So I had about 50 knots of wind or 40 knots of wind, and there was building seas up to 40-foot waves. I'm in a 37-foot boat. That's a big wave for me. The boat was getting knocked down several times, and I'd suffered sub-damage to my sails, and so I ended up having to string the row, turn tail and run. And then eventually it took me another 2 days to tack up wind under storm sails in absolutely no wind, but in heavy seas to get back to New Zealand. I was very glad to get there in the end. So I got to New Zealand. I had 9 days to fix everything that I'd broken on the boat, and then managed to race back to Australia. So that was a fantastic moment for me too, because racing is my home port, all my family were there on the Great Wall. We had a fairly uneventful trip as far as weather conditions go, but it was really challenging as far as wind was shifting a lot. We had 0 knots to 30 knots constantly throughout the whole trip. So from a single-handed perspective, it was a really challenging trip. But we did it, we made it. So now I've sailed around the world, done a Hobart, done this amazing contract for Alice Racing. I've single-handed twice solo across the Tasman Sea, and I'm intending to become the very first female to circumnavigate Antarctica, solo, non-stop, and unassisted. Now, 2 guys have done this previously. The record is currently held by a Russian sailor, Fedor Konchakov. Now, I'm not going to let my sex get in the way. I also intend to break the man record. 102 days. Now, because Fedor did it as part of the Antarctica Cup Ocean Race, it means I also have to do it as part of the Antarctica Cup Ocean Race. So here's our racetrack. We leave from Western Australia, Albany, head straight down to 45 degrees south. And we circumnavigate in a parallel from 45 degrees south to 60 south. All the way around, big loop around Antarctica, 16,000 nautical miles, and then I arrive back in Albany. So an average of 7 knots, it should take me 90 days. So at the moment we're in the developing of the boat, designing phase. We're building a monohull, 50-foot purpose-built boat for this circumnavigation. If you guys would like to follow along and follow the boat building phase, follow the circumnavigation phase, please go to my website. It's lisablairsailstheworld.com, or you can come and chat to me down here and I can give you all those details afterwards. Now you saw a slide just flash up there, it said why. Now that's one of the biggest questions I get when I tell someone I'm going to go sail around Antarctica. And everyone's like, why? Why on earth would you want to do that? It's freezing down there, it's miserable, it's huge waves, it's dangerous, all these things. But for me, after doing something like the Clipper race, going from nothing to achieving that, I want to show others what's possible. To me, that was huge. All of a sudden, I'd circumnavigate. And if I could do that, what else can I do? So that's one of my main reasons for doing this. One of the other reasons is, since the Clipper race, I've had lots of people come up to me and say, you've been an inspiration, it's really changed my life. I've gone and done this, I've gone and done that, I took the leap of faith. Thank you so much. And for those few people that came up and spoke to me about that, that just made it all worthwhile. So hopefully, at the end of Antarctica, I'll have a few more people that I've managed to inspire with my adventures. So thank you for following along. I'll be just down the side here if you'd like to come and have a chat to me and hear any more about my adventures. And enjoy the rest of the afternoon.
Thanks indeed, Lisa Blair. Great presentation and of course great adventures, both past and to come.